family has lived in East Tennessee for many generations. My mother's family is directly descended from General James White and the McClung family. I love this part of the world. I speak from the heart today because our lakes and our rivers and our mountains are precious gifts from God. And so I wish to speak about my concern relative to carbon emissions and specifically related to the Gallatin Power.
Former classmate that was worth coming down for Valentine's Day. Our organization is a regional nonprofit organization that is involved in energy policy and environmental matters, and we do work throughout the Southeast. And the Tennessee Valley Authority is one of the key utilities that we engage with.
Difficult choices that need to be made during this decade. My name is Gretel Johnston. I am a co-founder of Mothers Against Tennessee River Radiation, so obviously I am biased towards renewable energy and energy efficiency, and our group is very concerned about nuclear waste and the legacy we're leaving in our valley.
I'm currently attending Chattanooga State and will be transferring to UTC to receive my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. I've had the privilege of interning for TVA for the past 4 years and have worked in the Nuclear Power Group's electrical design engineering group for the past 2 years. TVA has been a fascinating place to work.
Started in 1983. Lynn serves on the board of directors at First Alliance Bank. She also has served on the Memphis Light Gas and Water board. That's our largest distributor, and now she's got to change her spots and come over here on this side. But Lynn, we're glad you're here and welcome. Pete Maharan, who's from Bowling Green, Kentucky. He's chairman of Hilliard Lyons Financial Services. Pete serves as a member of the boards of a company named Houchins, and I know that company, and I think I'm right, it's the largest ESOP company in the country. That means it's employee-owned, and it's quite a company. Albany Bank Corp, Sicilian Bank Corp, and Gray Construction Companies on all those boards, and Jackson Financial. And he's also on the Governor's Scholars of Kentucky board. And Pete, thanks for being here. And also Mike McWhorter. Most of us in Tennessee know Mike. And Mike's a distributor, Central Distributing Company. He owns it and is president of it, Volunteer Distributing also. And I think I'm not supposed to give commercials, but he's in the beer business. And I asked him last night who won the advertisements for the Super Bowl, and this will give you a hint, the Clydesdale had won. Mike practiced law in Nashville. He clerked for the Tennessee Supreme Court, and he serves on the board of directors and formerly chairman of the board of the First State Bank in Union City. He also served on the board of Jackson Energy Authority, which is also a TVA distributor customer. Mike, welcome. Glad you're here. Joe Rich, and a while ago you might have figured out he's from Alabama. He's for the Surratt and Permit, a law firm. Named Jones and Smith or something. But anyway, he serves as the chairman of the Tennessee Valley Base Realignment and Closure Committee. He's co-chairman of the Tennessee Valley Growth Coordination Group and is a board member of Axometrics and the Von Braun Center for Innovative Science and Appleton Learning. And we welcome you, Joe Rich. Thank you for being here. And then I want to also re-welcome Bill Johnson. And I think this new board, when we'll get through that term before long, appreciates the work and appreciates you and their meetings with you so far. We're glad you're here. Look forward to your leadership and look forward to working with you, Bill. So I want to officially again. This meeting, we will approve committees and committee chairs. And that's, and so as you watch us through this meeting, we'll be reporting out as we have with the quote O board, and then we'll have new committees and new committee chairmen, which we will approve. We have to do that in this meeting, so we can't start with it, so we'll do that in the meeting. So these, you'll see where everybody kind of lines up and what committees we all end up on. But I'd like to give any board members a chance to comment about welcome to the new board, or comments from any other board members. Anybody got any comments before we go on to the official part of this program?
Mr. Chairman, we forgot to acknowledge the chairman of Jackson County, Alabama County Commission. I just wear nostrils in Alabama.
Glad you're here. Sorry I missed you. Joe, you got any comments? You want to send anybody got any comments?
Well, I just want to add to the welcome of our new CEO, how much I appreciated during our search and after he's arrived, the obvious commitment and personal interest that he has in the full mission of TVA beyond the cheap and efficient production of electric power. And Bill had a lot of opportunities when he accepted this position, and really, I think it's important to understand that the opportunity to deal with the broad mission that TVA has with stewardship, with development of the valley was clearly an attraction of this position, and more than an attraction to us, it's just really a critical measure of what we want in a CEO, and I think I can speak for the full board in saying we're really looking forward to watching and working with you and assisting you in promoting that full mission.
I'll add a comment just in welcoming the new board members and saying that we've only gotten to meet you and know you just a little bit, but I'm certainly impressed, and I'm hearing from many of the TVA staff who took you through orientation, kind of the same thing. The early reviews were good, and we really look forward to working with y'all. I think the challenges are daunting, but I think this is going to be a really good group that's going to be able to get a lot of progress accomplished for TVA.
And I'd like to support that statement as well. I have found from being on the board that there's a lot of work to it, a lot of material to understand, issues to understand, and we have a wonderful staff, but it is important not only because we need to have quorum when we make decisions, it's important to have many voices and folks who are willing to work to understand those issues. So I'm impressed by the credentials of all of our new board members, and already had the opportunity to be impressed by their comments about issues that we are currently facing. So I want to say a big welcome here on this Valentine's Day.
Thank you all, and I said this a little bit with Tom Kilgore. Go ahead.
I want to comment before we go on. I thought maybe Mike was going to say something. I was waiting for him to say. I'll give him an opportunity afterwards. But first thing I want to say is that I am glad to be here. It's more work than I had anticipated today. But I got a call to ask me if I was interested. But also I think it is an opportunity to have an impact, which is very important to me. And I have been impressed by the people I have met. I think that our new CEO is was the right choice. Something that I've been talking about from day one is efficiency, and I know he's on that page. But I have been flattered to a high degree because of a family from Greenville, Kentucky, the name of Rice, that I've dealt with since the 60s. Jeff Rice, a longtime TVA employee, is here, and he has 2 children that work for TVA. Give something about the history and the commitment toward the organization. Jeff told me at the break that this was his first meeting, which leads me to think that perhaps that me being on the board was part of the reason for being here, and that's very flattering to me, Jeff. Take it for him. Thank you.
All right, you put pressure on me now. I'm delighted to be on this board, and I'm delighted to get to know many of the TVA staff. The 4 of us became rather collegial going through the new board members through the confirmation process, and we get along very well and seem to have very similar views in many ways. Not that we're all alike, but I think we'll work well together. Look forward to getting to know the old board. And working with them as we go forward. Barbara, you're excused from that description. There's just one thing I'd like to share with the audience, how important this is to me. Growing up in a rural area of West Tennessee, my grandparents, like many other of your grandparents, were participants in the Great Depression. And I remember my grandparents talking to me about what a difference TVA made in their lives, bringing rural electrification to those areas and to the cities and the region that we serve, and what a difference that made for them, not only from river flood control, but just from bringing industry and bringing comforts of electricity into their homes. I'm delighted about this board because the difference that TVA made in the lives of those people not that many decades ago, I believe the decisions we make here can make a difference in the lives of my children and my grandchildren. So I'm delighted to be able to participate. I look forward to working with everyone here, and I'm really looking forward to working with the staff here at TVA. Thank you.
Mike, I didn't know I was as much older than you as I am, because TVA bought electricity to me, which makes me the age of your grandparents.
I was just slower getting up here.
I need to cut this into the table.
Mr. Chairman, since as Mike mentioned, the 4 of us got to be fast friends going through the confirmation process. So since the 2 of them have spoken of that, Joe now puts the pressure on you and me to at least let those in the audience get a little feel of who we are as well. Well, I'm you, as the new director, I'm directing you, then you'll have to make a comment after. Mike, it's
I'm losing control.
Mike, you mentioned that your grandparents grew up during the Depression. My father grew up through the Depression. He was 15 when the 1927 flood came through the South Delta of Mississippi. He talked about the fact that in 1927, because the family house was a little elevated in the flat country of the Mississippi Delta, 27 people lived in the house. He said everybody got along just fine. Now, I think that time causes bad things to diminish, but he indicated that 27 people lived in the family home. He said that every year when the spring floods came, excuse me, the people would have to, their whole lives were disrupted because of the flooding situation. In that part of the state, the flooding was put under control by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. But in 1933, when the TVA Act was passed, that level of support to controlling the river system and rain floods made a significant impact to the people in the Tennessee Valley, similar to what the Army Corps of Engineers did to the South Delta Valley, Mississippi region. So my connection with TVA goes back from hearing my father talk about how wonderful flood control and protecting the waterways is to our overall economy. I am delighted to be a member of this board as well, and I hope we will be able to make a positive impact because TVA is so important to the economic vitality of this region. I hope that as a board we will work together to set a tone at the top and ensure that there is a strong governance structure and a good strategic plan in terms of revisiting the integrated resources plan, working with the president and the executive team and all of the members of TVA. We'll be able to improve operational efficiency and maintain the public trust. And I look forward to us doing that. And Mr. Chairman, my final comment is I want to thank you for putting us through a very rigorous orientation session over these past few weeks. And getting to work with you, the other board members, I'm not going to call them, they're just the other board members. The president, the executive team, and the board services staff have brought us up to, we'll probably not ever get up to speed, but you've given us a great bit of information to make us feel at least comfortable here today. Thank you.
I guess I have no choice. First, this is a tremendous honor. Those of us that grew up in the South and have always thought of TVA as dams and irrigation and things, you start learning the real things that it's into and how important it is for not just economic growth, providing energy to our families, but every part of our lives. A little bit of history. My father grew up very poor in South Alabama and worked at the WPA programs, building dams for what later became TVA, and was able to save some of that money and went after the war with Georgia Tech and became an aerospace engineer. Led to moving to Huntsville, where he worked in the space program, which I find very interesting. Two of our greatest achievements in our country relate to both TVA and the space program, and being able to see them both come together is kind of an interesting and somewhat heartwarming experience, which you can be here to be at this meeting today. But I think once we came on board, and all of us have served on numerous boards, one of the first things you find is you have to kind of work your way in because they really don't want to hear what you have to say. And this old board has been exactly the opposite. I've never seen a group that has encouraged more involvement so quickly, allowed us to ask every crazy question, bad question we may have, and every time it will be treated with respect and a good answer. That also reflects on the quality of the people we're serving with, but also the quality of the employees of TVA that we've learned a little bit about. We haven't met certainly more than a few of them, but every one of them are as professional as a group can get. And last but not least, I've had the opportunity, only probably 6 or 8 hours with our new CEO, but I can tell you we're fortunate to have him. We're lucky that we're bringing new ideas into an organization that's, while it's got many good things about it, still has a lot that needs to do differently, and we're fortunate to have him. One point of criticism that's always important to bring up, and we're not just going to tell everybody how good. They let me get on the board about a week, and they decided to go clear cutting under the power lines from Huntsville. That led to every newspaper article that we don't have a daily paper anymore, and for whatever reason. Every front line is about the tree cutting. I will say that even though my trees weren't involved, they hung this on my door last night. But I would also say the chairman, I told him what was going on. He immediately engaged with our mayor. He has done, I think, everything possible, recognizing we have an obligation to make sure the power is transmitted and it's safe. And I commend you and your organization for the way you responded for my first difficult situation. So thank you.
Thank you. We actually had planned to trim those trees in September, but wanted to wait for the confirmation.
Jill, thank you. We have, you can tell, we spent a lot of time together already. And one thing I mentioned I was going to say about when Tom was leaving, this change in this government structure of TVA has been an interesting process since 07, something like that, when we went from the 3-person board to this board. And we're still learning. We're still And I encourage you to kind of help us through that, because we want to be a board. We want to do what Lynn described well about strategy and what we're doing, but we don't want to be the operators. And so we're still kind of working through that. And because of the history, 77 years one way or however many, then we got to do it this way, so it doesn't happen overnight. But we remind ourselves of that all the time. And of course, Bill Johnson, we're trying to have those discussions with Bill, and even when we were interviewing Bill, it was a process of trying to understand the difference between operating and being a board. And that's continuing. We'll continue to work on that. Bill, since I've said that, I'm going to call on you to do the president's report. Thank y'all for your comments, and thanks for kind of putting up with that. I think it's important for y'all to know that we're making some of these decisions, and I think it's been a good dialogue, so thank y'all.
Response to large rotating masses, but if you're an electrical engineer in the audience, you will understand that. So, we're not quite done with the environmental assessment on Gallatin. Pardon me, we're currently planning to install pollution equipment by 2017. However, we also had a lot of input today. We've had some input over the last couple of days, letters to the board and otherwise. And we will continue to take input and continue to evaluate. I mentioned a couple of these, slow economy, weather. Part of this is energy efficiency. Let me just point out here, energy efficiency is the right thing to be doing. Anything we can do to help people in the valley lower their bills is the right thing to do. We may disagree on what level, to what extent, but we are committed to doing the right thing in energy efficiency and on other things. Now, this chart will demonstrate that we have a little bit of a problem where our revenues are going down and our spending is going up. And there aren't that many ways you can fix this. You can raise your rates, which is not a good idea. You can sell more, which is not up to us. And you can do it more efficiently. Those are your three options. And so our first attack on this is going to be, as Pete said, let's think about how efficiently we can be, how we can as an organization deal with the impacts of revenue erosion. Because a lot of times that happens because the right things happen. Or near zero carbon emissions. So a broad definition, the biggest source of this for us is nuclear power. It's the largest component of clean energy. There's another definition, though, that is renewable, because renewable is part of clean energy. And for us, renewable is energy production that is sustainable and often naturally replenished. So the examples here are hydro, wind, solar, landfill methane, biomass co-firing, and geothermal. And in this category, hydro would be our biggest renewable component. Would you say with a little focus on this over the last 15 years or so, TVA has reduced its CO2 emissions by 28% over the peak in 1995, and we're currently emitting at about our 1990 levels. So we are making progress here. We've made great progress in reducing NOx, SOx, and VOx. We will continue this discussion about how much renewable is correct, what is the correct balance in the balanced portfolio. But I will say we've made a pretty good move here.
For the quarter, it was weather was mild this year, but weather was also mild last year as well. So when you look year over year, the impacts of weather were really not a factor. We did go to time of use rates in the fall of this year, and so we are seeing lower revenues in the first quarter because of time of use rates, but we had that included in our plan. And what you would see is in the summer months, we'll see higher rates, which is in line with sending an appropriate price signal to our customers, essentially in line with what the plan is. I show you the base rate element of that, and so you can see that it's lower this year than planned. That $51 million less is because of weather. And then if you look at it's substantially less than the first quarter last year, that was 1.624, and that's really because of the implementation of time of use rates. If you look at the fuel revenue, $996 million, that's more than the $958 that was planned, and that's because of the price of natural gas, and then us using the most economical resources, which in many cases were coal. And then if you look versus last year, $914 million versus the $996, and that's because of the nuclear refueling outages. So you can see how that flows directly through in the financial results in terms of the revenue.
If you look at the fuel and purchase power expense, then you can see that those are in line with those same drivers. The fuel and purchase power expense, though, essentially on plan for our operating cash flow. You'll remember we had slightly more net income, or slightly less of a loss than what we had in our plan, but we did have working capital that impacted the actual results in terms of our operating cash flow. And that really was the fact that some of our expenses in September, the last month of the last fiscal year, were slightly higher than what we had in our plan, so the cash outlay for that came in this fiscal year. If you look at compared to, kind of ironically, compared to last year, the operating cash flow was exactly the same. In terms of investing, this year, $652 million of investment. That's slightly below what our plan of $680 million is, and that's essentially timing of major projects is what's caused the difference there. Compared to last year, it's substantially less. Last year we had